with the report menu, what the different types of reports are that come native in Retail Pro. We'll also show you a little bit about some of our Big Hairy Dog custom reports, and talk about how those got there and what you have available to you. And then we'll be going through a little bit of simple Crystal reports writing, okay, and time permits, hopefully a little bit about how you can group reports, schedule them for your own purposes on your own. This is designed to be an overview, right? So I see some of you on my list here that are brand new to V9. I see some of you on the list where you've already had some training in V9. So this will be a review or reinforcement, right? If you have questions, you can use that little raise your hand icon, and I will try to address them. I'll try to pay attention to that. So I've got a rather large group, so I probably won't be unmuting you guys. It'll sound like a convention hall. Okay, so without further ado, let me minimize my little goodie so I can see. Right, so version 9 reports. Okay, first thing that you need to know is version 9 reports are a separate executable that's on the desktop. I've got it like way up here in my corner icon, if you can see that. So if you're running version 9 reports, you have the separate icon, so it's outside of Retail Pro. And just FYI, if you're running a copy of Retail Pro reports executable, it does not take a Retail Pro seat. So for those of you who have several version 9 computers at your store or your warehouse or whatever, and you share a seat, if you're running just the reports executable, you are not taking up a seat. So you can have 6 people in Retail Pro reports. Okay, and as long as they're not in Retail Pro proper, which is using the Retail Pro launcher, they can all be running reports at the same time without having 6 actual seats taken up. All right, so to access it, you double-click that icon. It's going to use your Retail Pro login. In the interest of time, I've already logged in, right? So I can bounce that up so everybody can see it. All right, so initially what you need to know about the report viewer, okay, is the first time you launch it, there's a little bit of setup, not very much, but in essence, if you go to the options over here on the side and workstation preferences, okay, the couple of things over here that you need to check when you first set it up. Now, if you set these preferences up on the server or a workstation, they're going to persist across any of the computers in your local group, right? So if you have a store and you've got 3 or 4 workstations, anything that you set up here is going to be the same for all the workstations. You set it up once, and all the workstations use the same settings. All right, so we're going to start at the bottom here. We're going to go into printing. Okay, so out of the box, this is unchecked, right? And if that's unchecked, then you can't print just page 1 or just page 20 or whatever. So you want that option most of the time, so you're going to check that. Okay, and the other thing that you can set in here is what default printer to use. Even if you're not actually ever going to print, okay, you need the printer so that the report knows how to format the display so that you can look at it. Okay, so you set your printer. This does not have to be the default printer for Windows, but it has to be a Windows printer that's accessible from Windows in order for it to appear in this pull down. Okay, so you can set the printer. You can set a number of copies, stuff like that. Generally, people don't. It's getting to the point where most people don't even print reports. They're either PDFing them and emailing them to themselves or keeping them digitally instead of actually putting them out on paper. But you can actually print them if that's one of your requirements. All right, so the other setting that we want to check in here is up under General Appearance, right? So in Appearance, this setting, Display Report Filter, this determines whether or not you're displaying any filter parameters that you may have entered. Okay, in a lot of cases, this is the only way you know what date range you ran the report for. Okay, and I'll show you that when we run our first couple of reports. Okay, but if you come from the version 8 world, you're used to seeing those filter criteria on the first page. Your choices are first page, last page, or not at all. Okay, not at all, is not used very much. I can tell you that, because generally you want to know, did I run this for store 1? Did I run this for the month of March? What did I, what filters did I use in order to produce this report? So generally, first page, and then once you set that, it's going to apply across the board, and you don't have to remember it anymore. Okay, so from there, right, we're going to go over here to the reports icon, okay, and that's going to open up a little menu. Okay, so you've got menu sections, right, and so we're going to roughly cover what's in these menu sections before we go actually run a report. And so all of the sections except for other and custom are reports that come with Retail Pro. So we're going to cover those first for those of you who might be brand new to this whole endeavor. Just briefly explain what the difference is between a list report. A list report, you got it, is a list of records, usually a list of static records, not inventory stuff. So a list of customers, list of employees, list of vendors, but they're, in general, right, they're very simplistic, right? It's just a way to get a list of, in this case, your DCSs, okay? And, if you needed to print a list of your DCSs, then you could do that with this, okay? You can, any of these reports that you run from the Crystal Reports viewer here, you can export in any of the following formats, right? You're going to export to Excel and bring the formatting with you, i.e. pictures, subtotal formats, all that stuff. Or you can bring text only. If you're going to manipulate your data, then you want to use text only. Okay, you can make it into Word, you can put it into PDF, HTML, not used very much, but these are all the ways that you can potentially take this output, right, and save it or import it into some other format. And we'll do a little bit of that a little later. Just for the first report, I just wanted to point out what those options are and what these things are that are across the top of the page. All right, so this happens to be a one-page report, so I don't get my arrows where I can page through. Okay, but that's reasonably self-explanatory. You got a zoomer. This is one place where, if you're familiar with version 8 or 9, right, if you press the plus key in the preview, that does not work in the reports viewer, right? So you have to use this zoomer if you're going to zoom things. All right, so print button, it defaults to the default printer. You can print a single page, and you could change the printer that you want to send it to this time. It's not going to change the default the next time you go after that. So we talked about export. Save as is a way of saving this report with the data included. Not used very much, but you could actually save this report as a Crystal Reports report. Okay, and then you can open it, but you can only open it with Crystal Reports. So it's not, for that reason, it's not used very much. Okay, and then you got a Finder button, right? So you can, if you have a big report with item codes, you can find that item code wherever it appears. Refresh, go out and get me new data, right? In the case of a list view, that's not going to do anything. We'll do that a little in some of the other reports. And a close button, right? So the close button or the X in that pop-up window will do the same thing. Right, so list views, not used very much, okay, because there's not data analysis in here, and in some cases, like for the departments, and even for something like this, where you've got customer store credit. Let me widen this out a little bit so you can see. So customer store credit and last sale date. I could run this report, right, and I could use the filters to limit it to only those people that have a store credit, etc. I can do the same thing natively in Retail Pro, right? So if I go to Retail Pro, and I just like to show people this because a lot of people who are new to version 9 don't know that you have this native capability to take any list view, okay? And in this case, right? I've got a list view with my store credit info on it. Okay, my customer contact info. This does not have the last sale date on it, but if I wanted to add that on there, you can use your your page manager to do that. I'm just going to throw it on here really quick. Okay, so if I wanted to filter to only those people that have a store credit, I could do that with the filter on the side. Okay, and then whatever my output is, right, I can right-click here, select all, okay, right-click, export into PDF or into Excel. Now the formatting's not as pretty, but if all you really needed was a quick list of something, this is a way to do it. Okay, it doesn't involve a report, and you have more control over the structure of what's on the, what's on your output and what's not. Okay, so that I yank that into Excel. Here's the Excel output. Simple, so if you're just looking to yank data out, anything that's on a list view, you can get out into Excel. So that's a little side trip that I like to take here, because when we first start talking about these reports, right, anything that's in a list view, pretty much you can get by yanking it out of Excel if you care to. All right, so from there, right, we have summary reports and journal reports. The difference between journals and summaries is journals are lists of documents. Okay, so a list of voucher journals, those are your receiving document, a list of purchase order documents, a list of sales receipts. So most commonly when people are using journals, they're looking at their sales, right? So show me a list of the transaction numbers that occurred on this date. Okay, show me a list of sales orders in this case where there were deposits made. Show me a list of transfers. So these are reports again that come with Retail Pro. They're the stock reports, and they are lists of transactions. Okay, from there, the next category up are summary reports. So here's when you really start getting into things where you're looking at what's going on in your business. And in the summary reports, it is one data type, right? So it's either sales or on order in this case, or on hand in this case, or adjustments, right? So there aren't any in this category where you can see sales and on hand, or sales and on order, or on hand and on order. That does not exist in the summary. So these are one data type is what we call that. Okay, and as you can see, the most popular form of analyzing your business is what did I sell, right? So there's, I haven't counted these up, but there's probably 40 different sales reports where things are divided up, subtotaled in different ways, right? So one key to knowing what you're looking for here is and I teach people this, if the word item or style is in the title, then you're going to get that level of detail, right? So if I look at, this associate summary here, right, that's going to be subtotaled at the associate level. I'm not going to see items. If I look at this, okay, then I'm going to get item by associate. Okay, and we'll run a couple of these, not necessarily in this category, but I just like to make the point in both the Retail Pro stock reports and in our custom reports, we try to have the title reflect the level of detail. Like this customer summary, I'm not going to get line item detail out of that. Okay, I'm going to get, let me just run it really quick. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with running a report, if you highlight it and click the run button, you're going to be presented with a filter. Okay, and this filter gives you an opportunity to restrict the report to sales that happened in a specific date range, or just for a single vendor, or just for, in this case, you could do a single customer, okay, or customers that show up in a certain zip code. So there's all kinds of filters in all these reports that allow you to ask a question of this report based on the filter criteria that you fill in. Right, so I'm going to fill in a year-to-date's not going to be very interesting in this data, so I'm going to tell the system dynamic date go back to 2017. Okay, and other than that, I'm not going to restrict it. Okay, so if I run this report, it'll take a couple of seconds. Okay, and it'll yuck that up to the screen. So remember when I was talking about filter criteria, here's your filter criteria. So if I'm not printing this, I don't know what date range I ran this report for. Okay, all I know that is Jeff Kenshaw bought one thing, right, in this time frame and spent $265. And I don't know what date range it is. This report date up here, that's the date the report was run, not the date for the data inside. So printing filter criteria is very important. Some of them have, like, almost looking like a paragraph of filter criteria up here before you actually get to the data. Unfortunately, having that filter criteria is important if you need to know what the data is contained on the actual report. Okay, so we're in this customer summary for the short date here. I'm going to close this using this button right here. Okay, and then I'm going to point out, right, if I stay on this report and go right back in and hit the run button, okay, it remembers the criteria from the last time I ran it, and I can go change this to, you know what, Jeff didn't buy anything that year, or nobody bought anything that year. So I'm going to go add 12 to this, right, so that I get my date range for 2016. So I know this database had more data in it for 2016. It's been around for a while. Okay, and so here I got something that actually looks like what your report might look like if you ran it for a time frame in your business. Right, so at this point, right, I like to point out the fields that are on this report. Right, this is a Retail Pro stock report. It comes from Retail Pro. They set the format, right? They set the way it's organized. They set the way it's the way it's subtotaled, etc. And to change anything about the appearance or the behavior of this report, other than with the filter, okay, you need Crystal reports. Okay, and we will touch on Crystal reports as we go. But when you're, if you have your Retail Pro reports and you're running them, and you go, yeah, this is really nice, but I don't want my margin, right, to be visible, okay, on this. So there's different ways to do that that you might be able to control, okay, but if you want it just taken off entirely, you would need Crystal reports in order to do that, okay? Or if you say, yeah, this is good, but can you add, something like the date or something to the last date sold or something like that out of the customer file to this, then that you would need Crystal in order to do that. Okay, so as far as the reports that exist here, what you see is what you get as far as formatting. Okay, and anything else needs to be modified in Crystal reports. Okay, with the exception of filtering to data. Okay, whether you're including it or not including it on the report, the columns are fixed unless you use Crystal reports. Okay, the other thing that I like to point out that's relatively new, okay, is a last run button. Right, so if I click off here and I'm running other reports or doing whatever, still, right, if I come back to customer summary and I hit the last run button, it remembers the last criteria, that last filter criteria that you used and just runs it. Oh, well, look, that's not good. Hang on a sec here. That's a memory error, hopefully that you guys don't run into, but sometimes it happens. So hang on, let me kill that really quick. Okay. Retail Pro reports and delay. Here we go. Okay. All right. Hopefully we won't run into that again on this little trip. But that means I got to log back into Retail Pro. All right. So I'm going to log back into Retail Pro, and we will. I'm logging in, by the way, as the sysadmin user. Okay, and so on this seminar or webinar, we usually talk about how to restrict people's access to reporting. The first way that we restrict access here is by the, let's see, and we'll go back into the summary section. Let me widen this out. Okay, let me get this back into square here. Hang on a sec. Okay, so there on each report, right? So if I took this report, for instance, right, there is an access level. Okay, so anybody who's used to the way version 8 did things, their reports had access levels. In version 9, we don't use the access level for anything other than reports. Okay, and what this means, I'm going to go drop in here, edit this report, right, and use this pull down to show you what's in here. Okay, so out of the box, everything comes with a sysadmin access level. That means that you either have to be logged in as sysadmin or you have to be the checkbox sysadmin in Retail Pro, right? So if I go back to my Retail Pro and I go to employees here, so the sysadmin checkbox, this is what I'm talking about right here, right? So if you're checked there, you automatically have the sysadmin level permission in reports. Okay? If you're not checked there, like these people down here, you know, they can have their rights set so that they can only access certain reports, right? So if I look at this, the user group for Mr. Kett here, let me see what user group he's in. He's not in any user groups. All right, so let's go look at our groups. And I'll show you where this is controlled, right? So let's say we have a manager group, store managers, and they need rights to some reports, but not all. Okay, so in their permission group here, okay, there's a separate section on reports. So if I open this up, okay, and click on system, here's what rights currently a manager person, or a person that belongs to this group, has the ability to do. So you can turn off some of these, right? So in some cases, right, we might not want them to edit existing reports, right? So these things are, we might not want them to register, unregister, or save reports, or do whatever. So here's that cost thing that I was talking about. So if we uncheck this person, if there's cost or margin on the report, it will be start out. Okay, so you can control that without having to modify the report. It's just a small thing where people say, you know, I'd love this report, I'd love to be able to give access to people, but I don't want them seeing cost and margin. Okay, so if you uncheck this in their permissions, then even if it's on in the field, right, it'll be start out. There's a similar setting for viewing it in the list view, for viewing costs in list view, and some of you might be familiar with that. And reports has a separate one. All right, so we can control whether or not this person can see the sysadmin level reports. So if we turn that off, okay, that instantly gives us the ability to say, unless I explicitly grant you permission, okay, by making sure that you belong to level 2, then you can't see the reports. Okay, so any of these reports, if I go through and just look at some of these other ones that are stock reports, right, they all come out of the box. Well, somebody's been in here and changing all these. So out of the box, they're sysadmin, right? So if I turned off the permission to see sysadmin level reports for my store managers, they would only see the ones that they have rights to, right? And so this one has a level 2. Okay, so if this level 2 is checked right here, they could see that report. Okay, that other one was a level 4, right? If I have that checked, they could see it. If I have it unchecked, they can't see it. Okay, so this is one way that you can control or give people the reports menu and keep them out of trouble and keep your info safe, right? If they never need to see cost, you uncheck that, right? If you don't want them seeing every report, the minute you uncheck that, you're good, okay? And then anything else, right, that you want them to see, you just have to change the access level so that it's one they have access to, okay? And changing the access level is just this edit button up here, right? And then pull down and put it in the right level. All right. That's a little bit about control, right? I'm not going to go demonstrate all of that as far as proving that those settings work, but that is one way that you can control who sees what on a report without getting into Crystal. Okay, so we were talking about summaries, right? So summaries, can be at the detail level, i.e. An item level. So if I look at my sales, I've got item summary, right? All different kinds of item summaries, subtotal different ways, right? Item summary by store basically says, item, sales, store total. Okay, item summary here is a company total. So regardless of any store, right? You run that. Let's run one of these really quick. I'm going to run it wide open because I don't have that much data. So I'm not going to filter to anything. So this is showing me sales, item summary sales for my, since the beginning of time for this database. Okay, some of the Retail Pro stock reports have these pretty graphs. Some people like them. Some people go, oh, those are useless. But anyway, the bulk of this is, item level, and this is all rolled up to company. So if you have multiple stores, right, you are going to get one line that shows me the sales for all my stores combined. If I ran the one that's by store and I sold in multiple stores, you should see separate lines per store. Okay, and the way they're organized is up to the report, how the items themselves are sorted, how the subtotals themselves are sorted, and I will show you that when we get into Crystal. Okay, and so a lot of times with these reports that came out of Retail Pro, we didn't think that the way that they were sorted or organized was very convenient. Okay, so we created our own version, and you'll find that up in the custom. So we'll go through a few of those once I'm done explaining the different categories here. So summary, right, one data type. Okay, the minute you get more than one data type or more than one date range, you're talking about a merchandise report. Okay, so in the Retail Pro world, right, they have a smattering here of multiple data type reports. The most commonly used ones are these on-hand and sales reports. The title says last 30 days, but when you run this, you can choose your date parameter. Okay, so just because it has last 30 days here and that the date range is fixed, and I'll show you where it's actually defined by default. Okay, it doesn't mean that when you run it, you can't scroll all the way down here and say, I don't like that date range. Where's my date range? My date range disappeared. Sold date, blah, 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 blah. Oh, here's last 30 days is right here. Sorry. Okay, so instead of last 30 days, you want to make it last 90 days, or you want to make it, last April, right? You get to do that any way you want on the fly, right? And then when you run this, this will apply, that date range will apply for this run, okay? And then the next time you access this, unless you do last run, it will pull the default parameters. Okay, so here's another report similar to the one we just ran, only this one's got on-hand quantity. This one is by store, so you can see multiple stores here. That's my on-hand. If I had any sales, they would be showing up here, so I didn't pick one that had a very good selling ratio. Okay, but this is another one of those out-of-the-box reports from Retail Pro. Okay, by default, it shows an item on here if you have on-hand or if you have sales in the time frame. Okay, and that's how it's designed to work. Okay, so that kind of report, can be useful in a lot of cases, but we find that a lot of people want to use something like that for a restock report. So they don't care if it's out, right? They only want to see stuff that they sold, okay, and in a time frame. And if they have on hand and they didn't sell it, they don't want it on the report. So we create reports with filters to do something like that. Okay, so when we're talking about filters, Okay, this report, I'm in the reports section now. You can see this bar right here. Okay, in the reports section, and if I click on filters right below it, okay, I am now in the filter for that report. Okay, these are the elements that can be filtered in the report. And if I go to the criteria tab over here on the right, okay, here's all the current values for the default parameters. So you can see down here in sold date, that's set to dynamic last 30 days. And that's the default for this. Okay, and just because that's the default doesn't mean you can't run it. It'll still, the title will still say last 30 days because that's embedded in the title. But you could also change that, right? You could go edit the title and take that out. Okay, change the filter to last 90 days, right? And let's just do that for grins, right? So 90 days and 90 days, I'm going to change the default filter. I'm going to save it. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to the reports. I'm going to go back to reports, click on this report thing right here, right? Go back to merchandise and go back to this. Okay, and then I'm going to try to edit this and take off the last 30 days, right? So this is a canned report from Retail Pro. I go into edit, right? And I click in here, right? See, can't change that. Okay, so anything that came from Retail Pro, they like to keep their own titles on it, and there are reasons for that. But if you really want to have a version that says last 90 days, you can make a copy of this report, okay, and set your own filter for it. Okay, so if you don't care that the title stays last 30 days, right, then you can change the filter down here like we did just now. Okay, and so if I run this, you can see now that that's defaulted to the last 90 days instead of the last 30, just because I changed the filter. It's not going to change the title, okay, but if you really want to make copy after copy after copy, then we don't actually try to cover that too much in this, but that is something that you could get with a trainer and somebody could show you how to do it rather rapidly. Okay, so those are things that all come with Retail Pro, right? If you have something that came from Retail Pro, for the most part, they're restricting you from editing the title. You can change the access level, right? You can change the default filters, but you can't change the title without making your own copy and dealing with that. Okay, so we here at the Big Hairy Dog, over the past, I think, 10 years or maybe more that version 9 has been out, we find that there are some stock reports that don't quite do it for everybody. In the case of the item summary report, so this item summary report right here does not have description 2 in the fields on the report. Okay, and that's one of the first things that anybody who uses item reports asks for, because they've got like maybe just their style number in here, and that's not descriptive enough for them to be able to know what their what that item is. Okay, so for that reason, okay, we took a copy of that report, okay, and we called it BHD item summary with description 2. Okay, so anything up in this custom directory is something where we've taken the stock Retail Pro report or something that was created specifically by request for a client, okay, and changed it in Crystal, okay, and made it, sometimes resorted it. With this one, we happen to resort it and put some subtotals on it and do some other things like that. And for the majority of our clients, this is more usable, okay, than the item summary that comes from Retail Pro. We don't throw away the one that comes from Retail Pro, but we enhance it and we put it up in the custom directory. So if I click the run, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and run it right open because I don't have that much stuff. So you can see that when I get this report, right, first of all, most of the time with these item reports, we take the graphs off. If you like graphs, we can show you in Crystal how to put them back or how to keep them, okay, and or how to define them, okay. But what you're looking at here is, item sales right? And, description 1 and description 2 happen to be the same for that guy, but not down here, right? So I have both my style information and my English description, my color and my size, and quantity sold, extended price, blah, 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 right? So if this user gets to see cost, okay, then these amounts will be actually visible. If they don't get to see cost, these will just be stars, right? So anything having to do with the cost or the margin will not be there. Okay, it will be starred out. Okay, so this is an example of a simple change, right? And so what I usually do when we start talking about reports and filters and whatever is I show you how we made this simple change. Okay, so I'm going to minimize Retail Pro here, right? I've got Crystal Reports Writer already open here. So Crystal is an off-the-shelf, third-party, SAP controls it now, Crystal Reports Writer is what this is. So you don't need anything any fancier than this. It is possible to get it on the internet a 30-day trial, right? If you want to open that up and try some of this stuff yourself, you can do that. If you decide you want, you're going to use it enough to buy it, right? You can buy it from us. I think we can get you a better price than what you can get just out over the internet, but talk to us first. Don't spend the money until we, make sure you're getting the right thing, Crystal Reports Writer, and that you're not paying more for it than you actually need to. Okay, but Crystal Reports is it's an industry standard type tool using a lot of Windows tricks or conventions to deal with the items. So what we do when we need to modify a report, okay, let me go back to here and close this. Okay, so let's go back to the item summary the way it exists in Retail Pro Standard, right? So this is the item summary. This right here where it says report path, that's the name of the report, right? So in the summary section of Retail Pro 9 reports, RPT underscore S8 underscore item sum underscore RPT. That's the actual Crystal file. Okay, so what we do is we go to Crystal, okay, and we go open that file up. Okay, so I navigate to where that RPT sits, right? And they're always, when they come from Retail Pro, they're always in your Retail Pro 9 directory under reports. And so there's a folder here for each of those menu sections, right? You'll see more than that in here because we stash, client copies of other stuff in here. So yours will just have list, merchandise, summary, journal, a custom, and maybe other, right? So the report what we're looking at is in the summary section. So if I open up the summary section and then scroll down and find that S8 item summary, so this is the one that we're going to copy, right? So if I open that in Crystal, okay, this is what the report looks like. Now I don't want to modify this and copy it back down and replace my Retail Pro version. I want to change it, right? So the first thing we do is save as, okay, and call it something different. Okay, so that wasn't webinar, but that's close enough, right? So we call it something different. So when we start saving changes, we're not blowing up our original copy. Okay, so in the case where we wanted to add the description to this, so you can see I've got different bands in here, and the band here that says details, right? That's where the information is accumulated. Okay, so in this case, you can see it's grayed out. Okay, so what that means to me, okay, is that I'm not actually displaying this, and the reason I'm not displaying this is that this is by store. So I want a company line total by item SID, right? So this group footer number 2 is what I'm actually printing. If you were to go back and look at this report here, let's run this. Okay, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so down here a little bit, right? So each of these lines is a company total. Okay, it's actually a subtotal in a footer on the report. So the detail line is not showing. If you wanted this detail line to show, you could unhide it basically, and then you would get line, 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 line. Okay, but you would want to know what store it came from, so you'd add store to this. That's not what we're going to do today, but okay, to move things around on here, you got to look at where am I printing, right? So I'm not printing this line, I'm actually printing the group footer line. So that's the one I care about. But in the case of adding description 2, okay, we probably want to keep everything lined up for simplicity's sake. So in this case, when we worked on this report, we took the UPC out because we didn't care to keep it in here. So basically, I highlighted each one of these and shift-clicked to select them all. That's an industry standard way to select fields. Works this way. You can hit the delete key on the keyboard, right? I think there is a delete up here in the toolbar, but generally, I'm a delete from the keyboard type of woman. Okay, so you do that, and then now you get your space. Okay, and so these fields right here, okay, we want to shovel them over, so I can select them all. There's different ways of selecting them, but I can select them all and then control right arrow to move them. Sometimes depending on how you select them, they get a little overlappy. Okay, and then you have tools where you can select all of these fields right here. Okay, move them all at one time, which is control right arrow. Okay, and if it looks like they're still not lined up, you have alignment tools. Okay, so you can get to the alignment tools either by right-clicking on any of the fields and going to align, in this case, right. Okay, and then I'm going to realign this just in case it got off. It looks like it's a little off. So if I select all those, I have my choice. Do I want to align them on where these two fields are in my detail, or align them on my header? And I'm going to choose to align them on my header. So I right-click there and then align right. Okay, so now I've got my field scooched over, so I've got a space for my description. Okay, and so what you need to know about adding a field into the report is the Field Explorer here up under the database section shows you what's available. Okay, if the field is not here, you can't add it to the report. If it is in here, like description 2, okay, you can highlight it, drag it down in here, and in this case, just in case I ever want to reveal the detail in here, I'm going to put it in the detail line. Okay, I'm just shift left arrowing that to get that size right. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy it, okay, down to the subtotal line, because that's where I'm actually printing it. Okay, and so by doing that, I've got the ability to use the same report and reveal the detail and still have all the same details. Right, so you can see this is a slightly larger font size. Right, so one thing in Crystal, you can do what we call a format paint. Right, so if I want to paint the format from this description 1 over to description 2. So if I right-click here and go to Format Painter, that changes my thing into like a little no sign. Right, so I go over, and when it turns into a paintbrush, I can paint that format or copy the format from that field over to that one. Okay, so that is a quick way of making sure that everything looks the same. Okay, on a specific line. There's also a way where you can, if I'm on the detail line and I right-click, I can select everything on that line. If I want to make, if I add a bunch of fields and I want to do them all at one time, I can select all objects, right? And then right-click on any of the objects, and then I have multiple. All those fields will abide by whatever I choose in here. Okay. Okay, so adding a field, right? In a lot of cases, these fields are defined so that you automatically get a header. Okay, so I'm just going to line this header up. I'm going to click on description 1, hold the shift key down, click on description 2, right-click on my description 1 because that's what I want to align to. I'm going to align top. Okay, now I've got a little bit of a formatting problem, so I'm going to use my Format Painter again. right, to change that. And if you wanted to pretty that up and change the way the text looks, you can drop into that box and change it. Okay, so that's a simple change where I took an existing report, added a field that already existed into it, did some formatting, okay, and then when I save this, since I've already made a copy that's not the that is not the same name, okay, I've got a copy now that I can go register, and I will have a version of this report with description 2, all other things being the same. Okay, so that's a simple change in Crystal. We're going to cover a couple of other things in Crystal, but for now I'm going to minimize that. Okay, I'm going to close that. Okay, and so this item summary is untouched. In order for me to run that other item summary, I would have to register the report, which I don't think we're going to cover in this because it takes a couple of minutes to register the report, and it's pretty boring. If any of you have ever watched me do that or ever done it yourself, it is something that you know, takes a little bit of practice and maybe a little bit of training, and we can you know, set an appointment to talk about that in general, or we might have some videos that just show registering a report, so that you could review those and get that just little piece of it embedded in your skill set. Okay, so we've got all of the main categories here. We've got custom reports. If you see these things here with the exclamations at the top, that's a trick that we use so that if we've identified a report that that you as a client want to run all the time, we put an exclamation in the front of it so that it sorts to the top. This is an alphanumeric list. So if we want just the things we're going to use to sort to the top, you put some character in front. It doesn't have to be an exclamation. Some people use an asterisk. Some people use a number sign. Some people just use a dot. Okay, whatever you put up there, a character, those kind of characters sort ahead of numbers and letters. Okay, so that's why you see this here. If you have some on your system, then it's because, you know, somebody's been taught to do this. That doesn't come out of the you know, with a fresh install of Retail Pro or a fresh install of our custom reports. That's somebody's been renaming things. Okay, so for those of you who are multi-store, okay, once you have a report, like say for instance this report that is usable by the stores, and you need to get a copy of it out to the store. I just want to show you this, and so you know that it exists, right? So if you've registered this report on your main computer or anywhere, okay, you can highlight it, click export here. Okay, it's going to export the report plus whatever default filters you have set. This creates a file. Okay, and then in your Enterprise Communication Manager, your ECM or your polling, right, that's what we call it in version 9, if you're going to use exporting reports, there's a place where you turn that on, right? So you can turn that on, and all you have to do in reports is do this, and next time it polls, it's going to automatically pick that report up, okay, and put it out on the store. Now, it's not automatically going to make it appear in their reports list. Okay, you still do have to get on to their system, okay, and potentially, this is one way to do it, do an import of that item. But all you have to do to import an item is to click on it, okay, and then pick it off the list. Okay, so here's, let's see, the report that we just created. Not in that directory. Where'd it go? In, out. Yeah, it's got to be in that directory. Out. What's it? Associate summary. Yeah, this one. J1 associate summary. Yeah, so it was this one. Created. Yeah, 3.7. That's it. So all you do is you find it on the list, and then you open it. That's it. So you don't have to know a lot. Okay. You just have to know, or you just have to get on the store system and do it. So you could actually train your managers to say, go import. Okay, and if there's anything in the directory for them to import, they just click on it, and that's it. Okay. So we just want to make everybody aware, if you're multi-store, that's an option. You don't have to explicitly register those out on each computer. You can export them and import them from main to remote. Okay. All right. So let's look at, okay, so there's a couple of things having to do with reports in general that we need to talk about. Okay. And one of those things is groups. Okay. So what you can do, so you have a list of reports that you want to run like either monthly, daily, weekly, or whatever. So one of the first ways that you can handle that, okay, is by using a report group. If you go down here to groups, okay, I already have a group built here, okay, but we could make a new group, okay, and call it daily, and then find some reports, right, that we want to run daily. The key to this, okay, is, let's do, let's see, journal, sales, receipt journal, that. Okay, so the key to this is we're going to run the sales receipt journal, but we already have to have whatever values filled in order to run this. Okay, so if I say I've got my daily sales receipt journal, right, and I say run, okay, it's going to just execute for whatever the default filters are, right? So I didn't get a chance to look at my filter and change anything on the fly, right? So I can see, because I'm displaying my my filter criteria at the top here, that my default was set to last month. Okay, so that's key to dealing with these reports. You don't get a chance to fill anything in. If I execute my monthly, right, it does an on-hand report, which, you know, in this case, it's on-hand is on-hand, so there's no filter necessary. But these kind of things, sales associate summary and sales receipts journals, right, if I run this group, okay, I don't get any choices, right? It's going to run for whatever my default parameters are, and done, right? So this sales receipt journal was also in my monthly group, and the filters were set to month to date. Okay, I'm going to close that one. So you could print these or look at them or export them, however you want to do it. Okay, here's my on-hand summary. Okay, again, no filters needed on that one. Okay, but sales associate, right, I have set to last month. Okay, and two sales associate summaries set for last month. Okay, so that's key to dealing with the group if you're running them from this group menu. Okay, so if I go back here and I look at my filter criteria for, let's try this one, sales receipt journal. That's the one I ran the first, right? And if I look at my default filters down here on the left, okay, somewhere in here, it's going to say set to last month, right? So one month starting 1 month ago. So the idea here is I've got a list of monthly reports, okay, and I can come in on you know, the first of the month, and I can hit the run button, and it'll run all those reports for my last month's data, and it'll run for whatever my current on hand is. Okay, so that's the first step in automating your reports, is set up a default filter. Okay, that fills in the filter criteria that you want. So basically, you've got a one-button report now. You don't have to change anything or think about anything. Okay, but you know, you look at this report, and if I have this report on the monthly list and I have it on the daily list, then I can't use the same filter criteria. So I'd have to make a copy of this report so that I can have a separate sales receipt journal that runs with my daily group with its own filter for daily. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand when you're setting up default filters. Okay, if you need the same report with a different set of filters, then you need to register another copy of that report in order to attach the different filters to it. Okay, so groups, right? You can set up groups, and I did this kind of quickly, but what it is each of the sections, right, that you see on the menu have a list, and you find the report that you want to run on the list, right? So if we wanted to run an open order report every day, we'd get it up above the line, we set the filter criteria if necessary, okay, and then save it. And then the next time we did a group run, right, that report would come out on the group run. Okay, anything that's in the custom directory or the other directory, you're going to find under other, right? So there's a big long list of stuff on here because we use this thing for testing. So, you know, there's custom reports, there's a long list of stuff we've tested for clients in the other directory, but anything that's not the Retail Pro standard reports that come in journals, summaries, lists, you're going to find under the other directory if you want to set it. Okay, so groups is a way where you can set something up, but it's still kind of manual, right? You're going to come in, you're going to punch a button, and it's going to yuck the reports out to the screen, and you're going to decide whether you want to print them, export them into Excel, or just look at them and close them. Okay, so those are your choices with running a group. Okay, now we have been scheduling reports, right? So we like to cover that, even if for a takeaway from this, if you don't get how to do this yourself. Okay, this is something that you know is possible, so that if you decide you want to run your reports automatically, this is the way that you can do it, and tech can help you set it up, a trainer can help you set it up if you don't get this the first time around. All right, so the key to automating your reports, okay, is we put a list of the reports in a batch file. Okay, so this, I've got a notepad here that shows a basic batch file. Okay, so we're going to talk about what the little pieces and parts are here, just so I can use this to illustrate how this can work and what your options are. All right, so when we run the batch file, the first thing that we do is we need to make sure that Retail Pro Reports is not already running on this computer, because if it is, we can't take over and run it with these parameters. So the first thing we do is kill the reports if they're running, right? And we're going to actually run this so you can see what actually happens, and it's going to kill reports here, and then it's going to execute reports and use the following parameters to run a report. First thing, it's got to log into Retail Pro. So this is your Retail Pro login, your Retail Pro password. Okay, and if you're going to use this extensively, what we recommend is that you set up a user just to run reports and give it the rights just to run reports, so that if you change the sysadmin password, then your reports will still function, because a lot of people say, oh, we'll put in the sysadmin because we want it to have sysadmin rights and all that other stuff, and that's all good. Okay, but if you end up changing your sysadmin password, then this will no longer run, because it won't be able to log into reports automatically to do that. Okay, so username, password from Retail Pro, the name of the report. So this is the name of the report from this menu here, right? So this menu right here is, let's see, item summary. I think it's this one right here. On hand, nope, not that one. What is that? Month-to-date sales item summary. Oh, it's in the summary section. Sorry. Okay, so in the summary section, we have this, right? So it's this title. So generally when you're setting up this batch, this is how I teach people to do it, right? If it's not a stock report, edit, right? You can just Windows copy that string right into your batch file right there. Okay, so you need it to be exactly what shows, so spaces count and all that. So that's just the smartest way to do it. So it's run this report, right? And then what directory do I find it in? That's in the summary directory. How do you want me to output it? PGS equals PDF. So your choices are PDF, Excel, that's with formatting, and Excel text, that's Excel without formatting. All right, so, and this will run this report, output it in PDF, okay, and it will also output it in Excel whether or not you have Excel installed on this computer. Okay, which is important because a lot of people run these on their server and they don't have Excel on their server. So all you need is Excel on wherever you're picking the, wherever you're looking at the output, not actually on the computer that produces it. Okay, so Excel and PDF, well, let's make one of these Excel text. Okay, so that's Excel text. Okay, and then where do you want me to put it, right? So this R Drive V9 reports, okay, that's where we're putting this particular report, and this /S means silent, right? So you don't have to throw everything out on the screen because we're going to actually be running this from the task scheduler ultimately. So we don't need to have that output. Okay, so I'm going to save those couple of changes that I just made. Okay, I'm going to try and execute this now. Couple of things with this is I might not have all my parameters set. So let me just check. Month to date sales. I don't have any. Yeah, I still have some sales. Okay, so we'll just take a flyer and see what happens. So ultimately, the reason you have this batch file is not so that you can run the batch file yourself. The reason you have the batch file is so that you can put it in your Windows task scheduler to run while you're sleeping. So when you come in the morning, your reports are sitting there. Okay. If we go here, here's where my batch file is. I'm just going to run it. This is actually going to put some stuff up to the screen. This would not happen if you're running it from the task scheduler. But what it just did was kill the report viewer that was there. Okay. Yeah, so I spelled something wrong. Let's see if it'll run the second one. Yeah, run the second one. Okay, so I spelled something wrong in my first, but be that as it may, we're going to look at the output on the V9 reports menu, right? So this is where I told the system I wanted you to land this report, right? And so if I look at, here's 137, here's my PDF output, okay? And so that report runs, puts it out where you tell it, in the format that you tell it, and then at some point you can go open this up, right? Look at it, print it. We do have some people who are, we install a little utility where anything that's in this directory can be auto-emailed. Okay, so if you've always dreamed about having that go on, you can contact the service here and get an appointment to have auto-email installed. It's a little utility that's not strictly Retail Pro, but it's something that we've discovered that works pretty well for any kind of report that you want on a consistent basis that we can put in the task scheduler. Okay, so let's see, I don't have anything in Excel. Oh yeah, I do. So here's an Excel here that I did a while ago. Just to prove that we can do it, that's an Excel file that was created with the automated process, right? So you can see what it does is this is the month, day, year, right, and a millisecond, right? So if you run this report over and over and over and over and over again, you're going to get separate reports. It's not going to cover up this, right? So if you're using this on an automated fashion, then you're going to want to manage your output in here. So once you've looked at it, move it out of the way. There's other ways that we can automatically manage it, but in a nutshell, this batch file is how you run multiple reports from a scheduler. Okie dokie. Let me look back at my agenda here. I rambled on for almost an hour here. We wanted to deal a little bit with sorting and layout in Crystal, right? Before I let you guys go. So I'm going to go back to Crystal, okay, and I'm going to open up a report. So let's see, this one. Okay, so this is a customer summary report. Okay, a really simple report where it's ranked on, I think it's extended price, right? So you don't see that here in the screen. There's no way to see that. So the way that you do that in Crystal, okay, is there's a sub-menu where you can affect the way the order of either the detail line or the group subtotals. In this case, this is the detail line, right? So detail line, I want to sort on extended price here, so I know who my top customers are. Okay, so if I go into the report window up here and I go to record sort, okay, there is a way that I can define, okay, this is a little hard to see because I don't think I can't stretch that window, but I pick the value over here on this side. Okay, if I wanted to change this to quantity, right, I could just put quantity over here, slide that back over here, okay, and then my choice is ascending or descending. Okay, so if I want descending, that means the person who bought the most comes at the top. Okay, so just by changing that, I've changed this from a who bought the most units, or changed it from who spent the most money to who bought the most units. Okay, and so if I save that, right, then I can actually, and I didn't show you this, test the reports in some cases in Crystal, right? So I made that change, I saved it. This icon right here, print preview, okay, we'll go out and grab the data out of my database. You can filter it, but the syntax is a little complicated. And so what I show people on this webinar is, so there's some things in here you have to fill in, and if you don't know, remember which ones there are, it's always going to tell you, right? So if you try to click OK and you haven't filled in on the details, it's going to say you got to enter value here, and then it'll drop you into the field where you need to create the value, right? So subsidiary we have to fill in. For the most of you, it's always going to be 1. And then I press enter and it says, oh, there's another one. So what's that? Oh, employee ID. That's going to be 1. Okay. Now, if you see this, this means I need to log into the Oracle server in order to get your data. Okay. And so for any of you who have Crystal and you're going to use it, okay, this is the same for everybody. You log into the RPro ODS database. You're a report user. Okay, and the password is report. Okay, so if you end up installing Crystal, okay, we'll make sure you have that information. You're not going to break anything, right? You're not going to change any data. You're just reading data. So there's no fear about anything like that. Okay, so if I look at this report now, you can see I'm sorted on this column. Okay, and so just by changing my sort record here, right? So if I go back to extended price, we'll do that. Extended price, where to go? Oh, let's margin. Who did I get the most profit out of? That'll be fun. Okay, and then not margin percent, not this. Okay, so if I put, geez, way too much stuff in here. So that, okay, and that, okay, and that. Okay, margin is roughly going to be the same as price, it looks like. So that's not going to change anything. Price is not going to change anything. But anyway, that's how easy it is to change that, right? So once I save that, my preview is going to affect, you're going to see the effect of the change in my preview. So you can test inside Crystal to make sure, for the most case, make sure you're getting the right result, knowing that this is unfiltered data. So you're seeing all of everything. So if you have a big database, sometimes doing it this way gives you, 600 pages of stuff, and that's not overly practical, but it is an option, a thing you can do. Okay, so other things about here is we can change the way things are subtotaled. This customer summary isn't a very good example of that, but if I take something like this, okay, so this report is a department report. Okay, so again, this is something where I'm not showing detail, okay, because what I want is this to be rolled up to the department, not the DCS, the department. Okay, so I have added a subtotal, okay, and the way you add a subtotal is there's an icon right here for the group expert where you can add a subtotal, or you can go to the report menu, okay, and go to group expert. Okay, and so here on the right are the ways things are subtotaled right now. Okay, and I want to warn you, if you're doing this, don't take the subsidiary out, even though you're never going to use it. Just suppress it or hide it, because there are some formulas and things that are embedded in there that are often attached to the subsidiary level. and it'll cause problems. So leave the subsidiary in there, even if you only have subsidiary 1. All right, so if I wanted to change this, so instead of the department, I wanted it to be a DCS level, okay, I could select this on the right and put it over here, right? So now instantly I'm going to have another level of totaling, okay? And so if I go, so I say okay, see it opens up a line here, okay? And so if I were going to use this line, what I need to do is put the descriptive information, all this, maybe not the ALU, but the DCS code. I could put it down here by doing that, or this group name, okay, is actually going to be the DCS because I've defined the group, okay, as the DCS code. All right, so I could put that there, and then all I need to do here is add the summaries or insert the summaries. So I'll show you how that works. Okay, so any place where you want to insert a summary, see I've got things all wacky doodle here. So this is supposed to be here. This is supposed to be here. This is supposed to be here. Okay, so whoever did this one got everything all messed up. Okay, anyway, I'll just add a couple subtotals on here so I don't have to bore you with fixing this thing, which is kind of a mess. All right, so quantity, right? So if I want to insert a summary on quantity, the easiest way to do that is to highlight the field, right-click, go to Insert Summary. Okay, and then what level do I want to put it on, right? So if I'm just adding one subtotal, okay, to a line that I just added, then you pick it like that. Okay, if you're building a report here and you're adding all, a bunch of lines, you could do them all at once. Okay, because when you go select the field and you go Insert Summary, one of the choices is Add to all group levels. So I don't want to do that because I've already got the other group levels populated. I just want to add it to DCS. Okay, so let's see, extended price, I don't know where that goes over here, right? So when they're not lined up correctly, right, you can just get them on the line, right? Okay, and then move them to where they need to be. That one is supposed to be right here. Okay, so let's just leave it at that for now. So all of these are 10 point, right? That's the default. Okay, and that's going to look really funny because the ones below it are 9 point. All right, so I'm going to go to the group footer. I'm going to right click here and then select all the objects in the station, and I'm going to change the font for all of them at once. Right, so if I right click on any of them, okay, and go Format Objects, Font, 9, okay, probably don't need bold either, right? So change that. That's going to change the font for all of them. Okay, and if you've been doing this as long as I have, you also know that whenever you add a quantity, it's going to assume decimal format, okay, which is awkward if you're not using decimal format. So I'm going to take just the quantity field. I'm going to right click. Okay, I'm going to go to Format. And so this is the number part, or how's the number formatted. Okay, so for decimal, we usually pick either that. You have to get rid of the decimal, pick either that or that. Okay, and now you're going to see those quantities in clean quantity. So if I save that, okay, and then I preview my data, okay, now I can see what what I've got in output. Right, so I'm not going to click in the fields that I know I need to change. If I just press Enter, it says, please enter a value. Right, I click OK, and it says, okay, what value? So I need a 1 there. Please enter a value. Now what? I need a 1 there. Okay, now this one is a little different because this is there's a switch in here that says, does this person get to see cost or not? Okay, so if you want to test what it looks like without cost, then you would put the false on here. Okay, so I'll show you what that means. Actually, that didn't actually work. So anyway, I'll look into that. But you can see here I've got DCS totals where they weren't before. Right, so here's a DCS, there's a DCS, there's a DCS, and this is the D right here. This FW is the D. Okay, so that's how you add a subtotal. So you have two things to think about when you're adding a subtotal. What data do I need populated in here, and how does that affect whether I'm displaying details or not? We can get rid of this, right? Hide the blank. Okay, so you know, those are the basics of adding a subtotal. If you decide that you want to change this to vendor, right? You can right-click on it, change group. Okay, change this to vendor. Okay, so basically any field that you have in the data, you can change, right? And so the only thing that you have to be careful of is this has a formula in it, and the formula is, you know, hard-coded to the department margin, so you know that's going to blow up when you try to run the report. Okay, but you know, formulas are part of what you can do in Crystal. So over here in our Field Explorer, right, there's formulas. Most of these reports have at least 1 or 2 formulas in them, even the ones that came out of the box with Retail Pro. But basically, any math that you can do, you can duplicate in a formula. And even sometimes we use formulas to do things that are not exactly math. And so, you know, that would definitely be Crystal Reports 2.0. Okay, and we're not really going to delve into that. But just know that in the case of these margin calculations, right, you can't add up. You can't summarize a margin percent, right? So if the margin percent on the detail line is 50, 70, and 60, you don't add those up to get the margin percent for your total or for any subtotal. Okay, so in a lot of cases, you need to create a formula that says, take the summary. Looks a little you know, intimidating to most of you. That's okay. Take the values, take the summary, right, of cost at the department level, and take the summary of the price, right, subtract it, multiply 100. In other words, do the math. Okay, and then put that output in a field on retail on the Crystal report. So this is something that is an inherent bonus with dealing with Crystal, right? Where you can do sell-through percentages, you can do, you know, all kinds of things with the fields that are provided in here that you couldn't even think about in previous versions. Okay, but is a, you know, a report writing basic, right, for most industry standard type things. And now we have it available for Retail Pro. Okay, all right. So I'm pretty sure that's most of what we try to cover here. And so, like I said, I had quite a few people in this webinar. Some of your names I recognize, and so others of you, you will get an email from this webinar that is attached to the recording that I made for this webinar, so you can review it if you wish, right? And there are other webinars given by different people for V9 reports on our YouTube channel, on our website. I'd encourage you to look at those to get a different perspective, because if I trained you, other people bring different things to the table. So Jeff, our other trainer here, does get in a little more depth. Right, so if you're, you know, if you can handle all the stuff that I talked about here, and you want a different perspective, any of his V9 webinars would be a good place to start, because he gets a little deeper and explains things differently. So, you know, potentially you could get something out of looking at the same webinar given by 2 different people. Okay, and again, if you want to schedule some time with either a tech or a trainer, tech maybe can install auto email for you and show you how it works at that basic. But if you want to get into Crystal, that's going to be a trainer that's going to help you with that. Okay, if you want to know how to copy your own reports, okay, and register your own copy, a tech could potentially do that. But most of the time we like to keep that with a trainer if at all possible. All right, so with that, if you have any lingering questions on this, feel free to send me an email, luannl@bighairydog.com, okay, or you can just email tech at bighairydog.com, and if it's a training type question like this, they'll direct it to one of us to review. So what we try to do with this webinar is open your eyes a little bit to, you know, what's possible, what's there. Don't be afraid to run reports and see what's there, but there are a lot of them, so if you need help figuring out what's going to apply to you, let us know, and we'll work through it for you. All right. Thanks for your attention.